Before we dive into today's episode, I have something truly special to share. Next September, I'll be leading an intimate women's retreat through the south of France and northern Italy, and you're invited. Picture this: mornings exploring the colorful markets of the French Riviera, afternoons sipping wine, and a hotel view with golden Mediterranean sunsets. Whether you love photography, food, or just want to reconnect with your playful creative self, this trip is designed for you. Spots are limited, so if all this sounds like your kind of adventure, please visit tourwithabsolutely.com and look for the tour France and Italy with Crystal. You can also send me a message or check out the show notes. Hey guys, my name's Crystal Kenny, and I'm in love with creating. All things artistic and imagination involved. I'm an American girl who chased her creative dreams all the way to Paris, France, making a living using photography. This podcast takes you inside the stories of all the artsy folks I've met along the way and gives you that extra push to discover your creative gifts. The desire to create is deeply inside each and every one of us, and I give you the tools and inspiration to find a new way of living a more creative life. This is La Vie Creative, the podcast. So welcome back to the show, Matt. How have you been in this? We discovered a year since we last spoke?
It was ambiguous. It was about 250 episodes ago.
It was a while ago. We both have been very busy since then. You have completed your first novel. I am so happy for you, and we're going to chat about it today.
Well, it had been completed, and I had an agent, and then the agent disappeared, and then I had a publishing house, and they imploded, and then I got a new agent, and then I got a new publishing house. So incredibly, it's all come together despite the various pitfalls of fate and chance.
Yes, it sounds like quite the journey. That could be another book in itself, how to publish a book and all the obstacles that come along with that. I know there's so many people that want to release a book. So you did it. You finally did it.
I don't think anyone wants to read a book I would write about just feeling constantly and continually annoyed. The book that's coming out now is a spicier read, I think.
Yeah, it sounds a little more exciting. But last time we talked a lot about your poetry. Let's go back to talking about what drew you to writing in the first place. I mean, you have a background as a veteran. Did that influence the themes of this book?
Yes, I do remember last time I read you a poem, which I wrote for a then love, which totally fizzled, but at least I got to keep the poem. It's kind of like when you deploy to Afghanistan and have a beautiful T-shirt at the end. So your friends, when you work out, can be like, "Oh my God, you went to Afghanistan?" You're like, "Yeah, I got the shirt." This book is called Predators, Reapers, and Deadlier Creatures, and it's all about a drone operator in the war in Afghanistan who doesn't want to kill.
That is a pretty deep topic. I mean, a lot of people this has come up before in documentaries and social media, but what drew you to the title? Why this title?
Once upon a time, the title was Drones, and that did a lot of work because I wanted to say, we're not all robots, we're not all bees or ants, we're actually independent people. So there was a certain pushback and critique against that. Predators, Reapers, and Deadlier Creatures. The word predator and reaper, those are the names of armed drones. So we wanted something perhaps a bit more specific because the meaning of the word drones, by we, I mean my publisher and, editorial team or whatever. Because over the last 10 years, the meaning of the word drones changed. 10 years ago, drones meant scary killer beasts from the sky. Today, it means fun toy that we play with in the park. So we chose Predators, Reapers, and Deadlier Creatures because it's more accurate. And I think the sing-songy nightmarishness of the title and the ominous quality of promising a worse monster than an armed drone also does a lot of work. So I like the sing-songy rhymeness, and I also like the promise of another monster because although my book is a kind of gritty first-hand recounting of a war, it's also a love story, but it's also a monster story.
There's something for everybody, it sounds like.
I hope so. I did write it that way. And depending where it goes now, I pitch it as a magic realism, or I pitch it in a literary way, or I pitch it as a military book, or I pitch it as a fantasy because I wrote it for the ADHD generation of Instagram and TikTok obsessed people with 10-second attention span. So I wrote it knowing that the modern attention span is non-existent, and I wanted people to actually enjoy it and go on a kind of ride. So the text itself is constantly interrupted. There are many wild voices. There are many surprising things. I try to have one surprising thing per page. I think that's a general good principle. It's a little bit like American politics, except has nothing to do with American politics.
Oh, we can't even talk about that right now, but let's talk a little bit about your character Jones. He's a drone operator. He's empathizing with a suspected terrorist. So this is kind of complex. It's morally ambiguous. How did you develop this character? Is there any crossover between your life and his life?
I feel like you're asking me if I'm a terrorist right now, Crystal.
I am. This is actually the back door to that question.
Wow. What kind of trap have I walked into here? And we got along so well in that first interview. You were laughing at my jokes, which shows great intelligence. I think that the situation in Afghanistan was particularly gray. And I think since we last spoke, the world has gotten more gray. This particular example, Jones, loosely based on my own experiences in Afghanistan. But I kept the name Jones because it's such a common name in North America. I wanted to appeal to that everyman quality. I have been fighting and compensating for my common name for a long time as an artist. And at some point, I wanted to flip the script and say, fuck it, and actually own the name. So you're looking through a drone feed at a suspected IED, improvised explosive device emplacer, someone who's putting it into a road, but you're not sure. If it's someone who's putting a bomb into the road, you know that it's basically an enemy soldier and that they are trying to kill people. And many, many times it has succeeded. This very efficient, cost-effective weapon kept taking people's lives. Okay, so if someone's doing that, you know they are murderers and killers, or at least other soldiers. But what if you don't know for sure? What if you can't quite tell because the quality of the drone image is weak, or because it's really ambiguous what they're doing? Earlier in the book, there's a scene where they can't tell if the guy is putting improvised explosive devices into the road or if he is hoeing potatoes. And finally, they figure out, oh, he's just farming. And so they have to call off the strike. But people were getting very excited about doing the strike. So there becomes this weird pressure in an operations center for people who are working with this kind of weapon. Because I don't know, there's so many reasons why the killing becomes somehow fashionable or exciting or a thing that's pursued. And I wanted to write a book that like made killing hard again, or that held it up as a kind of sacred, awful, terrible thing that continues to exist in a world where violence continues to emanate every day.
I definitely like the idea of bringing back the idea that killing is difficult. That is, we should bring that back. I mean, I think that's a good idea. And especially in this age of video games, and I know they even hire people who like video games to drive these drones because, it kind of takes out the killing aspect. So you go deeper into those ideas, it sounds like, yes, this is an actual human being. This is real life.
Yes,
This is not a
the
game.
the book is all about humanity and dehumanization and how we need to slow down or shut off dehumanization and put controls in place in order to have actually ethical warriors. The book doesn't pretend that violence doesn't exist or that it won't exist. The book doesn't pretend that drone warfare is going to disappear, but it does argue that we can put on some governmental fetters and, in terms of militaries, put in some standard operating procedures in order to create ethical warriors as opposed to just murderers with, their pet dragon. But in terms of accountability and type stuff, I think when you're looking, okay, so we were in Afghanistan on this massive base in Kandahar, maybe 30,000 soldiers are there. In the middle of this lake, in the middle of this base, there's this lake of poop, which permeated every aspect of life. The poo pond, it was commonly known. And we can talk more about poo pond in a minute if you want, but I just wanted to give you the taste for it, okay? My point was, you're living on this base, there's a poo pond, and every couple days, maybe a couple times in one day, you get rockets fired at the base. The huge alarm goes off. Wow, 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 wow. You got to throw yourself down on your face. You got to cover your eyes so that you don't get any shrapnel on your face. Something explodes somewhere on the base. You feel it in the ground when the explosion goes off. You run to a bunker once you're allowed to. You hide in the bunker until finally the engineering teams go out and manage to like blow up whatever they need to blow up. So I think in the year that I was in Kandahar, 60 or 70 rockets were fired onto the base. They started doing research about who was firing the rockets. Sometimes, weirdly, they would trace the path of the rocket back and it would go back to like the compound of the president's brother or something like that. It would just be so corrupt and messed up that the very government we had installed would be kind of turning around on us, which ties in with how fast Afghanistan flipped back to the Taliban once the Americans left. Or other times you track the rocket back and there'd be, a boy, a young man, someone who had been paid what for them was like the equivalent of 3 years' salary, and which for a rich international terrorist was essentially nothing. So when you start looking at the terrorist as just someone who's incredibly poor and a victim of circumstance, it does make it grayer. And once again, the killing becomes harder because everyone is kind of ultimately a human and vulnerable to temptation, corruption, bribery, living. There's no country on the planet who loves the idea of an external force coming in and dominating them. Exhibit A, look what's happening in Canada right now is we have this resurgent of Canadian nationalism now that the saber rattling has been happening.
Definitely. And I think this is something, we need to explore and people are interested in. I mean, it's all a gray area. There's the good guys, bad guys. Who is the good guy? Who is the bad guy? I mean, this book explores a lot of it, it sounds like. And how much of your own experiences did you draw upon from the military? I mean, you just explained a little bit about that with the poupon, but is a lot of this fictional? Is a lot of it pulled from your own experiences while in Afghanistan?
A lot of it is. And one of the games that I play in the book is to keep it perpetually ambiguous. Is it real or is it a fantasy? The first page or the first 2 pages of the book, you get introduced to the Bigfoot, who we quickly learn prefers the term Sasquatch. And this unlikely friendship forms between the narrator and the Sasquatch. And you're like, is this guy real or is he losing his mind? He always seems to happen after some war trauma happens. So it's like, is he tied to the trauma? Is he a coping strategy or is he his own person? Part of the joy in the game that I have is to make the Sasquatch absolutely the most human character of them all, the most lovable, the funniest, the easiest to love. Whereas all the humans are all soldiers and killers and monstrous in their own way. Whereas the Sasquatch just wants to go home and, plant some trees and find his mother and, live his life again. So playing with that reality and playing with what is real and what's not real is one of my games, is one of my agendas in the book. Have I seen enough actual stuff in war to make something interesting and relatively accurate? Oh, yes, I have. Do I need to recreate my entire tour? No. I wanted to make a story. And I think if I just wrote a book that was, here comes a year of drone strikes, it would be so horrific and depressing that there would be no joy and no humor in it. And although it might be more accurate than the book I've written, it would be less emotionally accurate. Because yes, the war was exhausting, the war was brutal. Most people who I know who went to the war ended up with some kind of injury, physical, psychological, or otherwise. But there was also moments of laughter, moments of closeness, moments of brotherhood. You get a little sleep deprived, you get a little stir crazy from working 7 days a week for 5 months. Things will start to get funny that weren't funny before. So if you can So every war story, I think, that doesn't have some kind of element of escapism in it, or some kind of element of humor, or at least a funny moment, in my mind, is performing a war story, isn't trying to tell a truthful one.
Yeah,
So
definitely. I mean, if we didn't laugh, we would cry. I mean, you can say the same thing in the ER or police stories. I mean, you have to find some kind of humor in all of this. And talk a little bit more about the monsters in your book. I mean, you have real monsters, you have metaphorical monsters. How are they helping to explore these themes of dehumanization and self-reflection?
Crystal, do you know I actually teach a class on monsters?
I would love to learn more about that class.
I love teaching the class on monsters. It's at Sciences Po. It's technically an advanced English class, but the theme is always monsters. I've ran it 2 or 3 times now. And the first day in, I teach Frankenstein. And I'm like, okay, guys, here's the example seminar. It's Frankenstein, literary monster, easy, bam, okay? Here we are. There's this guy. He's gotten sewn together by his dad from the bodies of many convicts, and he's basically an animated zombie of some sort. He comes to life, our monster, our Frankenstein's monster. Frankenstein himself immediately abandons his son. This full grown man in his body, child in his mind, runs into the wilderness and learns an incredibly hard hazing of how to exist and how to live without any of the shelter of parents that we might expect, or shelter of society or of community. Okay. He goes and learns the hard way how to live, eventually finds a family who, by creeping through the window, manages to learn a surprising amount of English and even some literary references and stuff. And this works because the granddad in the house is blind. So at one point, Frankenstein's monster develops the courage to go and approach the granddad and say, "Hey, look, I'm horribly ugly to look at, but I feel like you're a kind man. And, I've been searching for community and a family and indeed a father my whole life, and I can't find it." The kids of the old man show up. They see the monster talking. They grab the sticks and they hit the monster and they chase him out of the apartment. Once again, he loses his whole family all over again. And it's that point we see this dramatic shift. Frankenstein starts killing people. He starts taking revenge on his initial father. He kills a kid or two. We start to lose sympathy for Frankenstein at that point because he just kind of accepts that he is monstrous. But at the end of the day, there's some poignant questions to ask, like, is this just what happens when we abuse someone and push them to the outskirts of society enough? Do they not just become that thing? Is it not somehow their destiny to become monstrous if they're constantly abused like this? Pivot, vampires, Dracula, creepy old dude, rich, lives in his castle. Every now and then turns into a bat, flies down to the village, seduces a couple 16, 17, 18-year-olds. Afterwards, the 16, 17, 18-year-olds are drained of blood and vitality, whatever. And it's just like Dracula is just a metaphor of like the class pervert, which we have centuries of experience dealing with these guys, that creeps coming down from their castles to chase after the women. So as you start to look at literary monsters, they start making sense, and you can see why we have them and why they stick in our minds, because they teach us something. But then the students grab it and the students run with it. And the students get courageous and they start doing stuff like, oh, let's talk about the monster of corporate greed. Let's talk about the monster of pornography. Let's talk about the monster of Tinder. And suddenly they do some actual research and they give a shit. And as a result, they make the spiciest debates happen organically in the class. Everybody's yelling at each other, everybody disagrees, and I just get to sit in the back of the class. Look at them go. And then I get the good reviews at the end, and that's how the monster class works.
That sounds really fun. I think my favorite class I took in university was the history of rock and roll. But this whole monster thing sounds pretty fascinating too. And I think we can all identify a lot of monsters in our world today. It's cool how you bring that back to literary as well.
One,
But
one of the students did the monster of self-harm. What happens when we become monsters to ourselves? And I think at the end of the day, there is a certain idea of the Jungian idea of the shadow, where we do have kind of light and darkness within us, especially you, Crystal. And
Especially
the
me. Why me?
and the goal of aging and maturing is to like properly integrate our shadowy nastiness and accept it. Because it's when we live in denial, it's when we pretend like we're perfect that we're actually kind of ruled by the shadow. So I wanted to have a place where that could embody our repressions, i.e., a poo pond. And I wanted to have characters that could embody our repressed impulses, i.e., monsters. And I think it happens very successfully. The challenge of writing a monster, because nobody believes in it, is you have to make it the most believable character of all. And for me, that meant I need this monster to have a voice. They're going to get the most physical description, and they're going to get an entire mythology that justifies why they exist in the world.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, what was the most difficult part of writing this novel? Was it, exploring the monster point of view, describing him, or what was revisiting some of these memories? What was the most difficult part?
One of the things that I kept almost, well, as accurate as I could remember from the war was this day we were working in this operations center, and we kept getting reports that there were wounded children. So, infants, babies. We get the first report, there's a wounded baby. Oh my God, what's the injury? The injury is scalded genitals. It was our job to arrange medical helicopters to go and get the wounded people. So we would send a helicopter after the first baby with the scalded genitals. Then, minutes later, a second report in another town, 100 kilometers away. What's the image or what's the danger? What happened? Another baby. What happened to the baby? Scalded genitals. Oh my God, is that the same incident or is it another incident? No, it's a second baby, second injury, identical injury. Okay, we're going to send another helicopter, go after that baby. Third event happens, pops up. Oh my God, what happened? It's another baby with the scalded genitals. No, you're shitting me. There's another baby with the scalded genitals. Yes, we need another helicopter to send for the third baby with the scalded genitals, but we don't have another helicopter. Okay, we need to call over here to get another helicopter to go after that baby. Oh my God, who do we have it? No, that helicopter's out doing a combat mission somewhere north. Okay, we need to talk to someone to pull it in. Okay, first baby died. Fourth baby, new report, new baby, scalded genitals, 100 kilometers away, another baby with the scalded genitals. You can imagine, I'm trying to recreate for you the chaos and the pain and how odd and confusing it was as you're frantically trying to feel nothing so that you can be a better robot and move the pieces around on the board and get help to the children. And the children were dying and more were popping up. And sometimes wires would get crossed and would need to correct, and people were getting very stressed out. And underneath it all, there was always this question of like, why is this happening? And you'd have people every now and then just kind of breaking character and screaming, what the hell is going on today? Why is this scalded baby genital day? And no one ever had an explanation for it. And I don't ever expect an explanation for it. And in retrospect, those were the hardest days of the war when something happened that was really brutally traumatizing to be a part of. And yet no one could even try to explain it. The monster stuff, the Sasquatch stuff, that for me was joyful. I actually got to play and stretch, and in my mind I was like, people need a break from horrors. This cannot be a book of all horrors. I cannot keep telling the story of the woman who died in the marketplace, and we tried to send a helicopter for her, but the men of the village didn't let her close, didn't let the helicopter team get close, so she just died there in the marketplace. Even if my brain keeps circling around to that, the book has to stop circling around to that. So writing the chapters with the mythology, that for me was a big part of what I was doing and how I was trying to make a balanced experience that would have people actually finish the book and enjoy it instead of just get the book, start to feel traumatized, throw it away. So if you'd like, I can share one of those more joyful excerpts.
We would love that. I mean, especially what you just talked about. I mean, I can't even imagine. I feel like this book, writing it could be therapeutic in many ways too, to kind of like you said, find a way to talk about that stuff and get it out, but also, engage people. We would love to hear a happier excerpt from the book.
Well, after I wrote the chapter about the babies, I just immediately burst into tears and I couldn't look at it for days. And then I went back to it. Was it therapeutic? I don't know. I think I had quite successfully repressed it, but my Sasquatch gives me life. Okay, so there's this one scene. The Sasquatch and the narrator have started hesitantly creating their friendship, and the narrator is obsessed with bodybuilding, and the Sasquatch as a kind of flex is like, watch me pick up this stone, and he picks up this huge concrete bunker, and there's this kind of the first moment where we have to deal with maybe this Sasquatch is truly supernatural. All right, get ready. Are you ready, Crystal?
I'm ready.
Don't matter if you pinch yourself. Sasquatch strength ain't no dream. Don't be shaking your head neither. Being strong ain't the problem for us. Problem is staying alive. Maybe tomorrow I get killed by a rocket. Tomorrow I get shot by soldiers. Tomorrow I get blown up by a tank. We don't know the end. Where do all the stories you never told go when you get killed? Do they just float up in the air like the soul? Do they soak into the sand like blood? Shit, Jones, I don't want to die, but being forgotten's the real death, ain't it? I was just a kid, maybe 6 or 7, when my first mom dragged me up a mountain. Nothing could really stop that lady once she got going, strong as one of your tanks. Top of that mountain, there's this huge log cottage with 6 or 7 graybeard Sasquatch, all holding big-ass books and staring out of sunken eyes with avalanche voices. The graybeards trapped me up there with them for 3 whole days, telling stories, reading from the big-ass books with squirrely tracks on every page. I think they wanted me to be like them, to keep our stories going, but back then I couldn't take all the pressure. Kept escaping, running down that big old mountain. Once I even set the teacher's robe on fire with a burning stick. Well, Sasquatch are pretty hairy folks, as you can see, and it took less than a flat second for his fur to go up in a sour-smelling cloud, and so did the big-ass book in his hands. A burnt beard was most upset about the book, moaning, "That's our history," over and over as he cuffed me upside the head. Never did become a real storyteller, just a bit by accident from the books I found with the most pictures. So now you listen to your buddy Noah, and I'm going to tell you about the secret of strength. Since you're so damn busy breaking your back to figure it out, and maybe after you can shut your hole about it for once. In the old days, Sasquatch had 6 gods, but now we only got 4. We had a god for the river, and a god for the wind, a god for stories, and a god for tasting moss, a god that guided dead souls, and a god of strength. Used to be that when a Sasquatch died, the soul would go into the ground and start a new life as a tree. But the god who made that happen was killed by the strength god, and now the trees in the forest are all empty, and Sasquatch die for real. So the 4 gods teamed up on the killer and threw him down to the earth, where he crashed in a big old forest and woke up without his magic. Maybe that was the start of the ending for us. Maybe if we had all 6 of our gods, we'd be together in the forest and not dead, dying, and scattered all over. Without his bag of tricks, the broken strength god started learning real fast about our world. How the earth drains you with its aging and hunger and sickness. How do gods die? They start turning slow into statues and losing their voices, trapped in their own heads with all them thoughts. The god reached out in a dream to a young Sasquatch, Mac, famous now, a real hero, and told him that his god powers were locked in a green stone on the other side of the world. Young Mac was strong. After the dream, he used a whole tree for a club and started walking the world. Nothing his parents or sisters said could sway him. Mac spent a lifetime searching the whole earth for that one green stone. Started in our homeland where the wind's cold and the stars hold up that banner of white light. Everywhere he went, people thought he was crazy, walking across great plains, fighting horrible horned beasts and creatures with pits of teeth for mouths. He swam rivers full of angry fish gnawing his junk. Horrible skinny-ass creatures felling him from trees in thick jungles and sank their fangs in his neck. In the mountains, he met other Sasquatch who tossed boulders at him, but Mac caught 'em all and threw 'em back. One boulder he hucked hit the side of the mountain, and the mountain roared like a seasick dragon. About half of it crashed down, making a cloud of dust that lasted 3 days. When it finally blew away, that old mountain was just a broken finger, and the village, the whole tribe, even the little ones, were buried neath it all. Mac fell into a black grief and tore off his beard, climbing over the rubble, trying to dig everyone out from neath the stones. Spent a whole year of his life digging, and the grief turned him old. Balls drooping, hair got thin and white. The wind cutting and spearing him so much he wrapped himself in a long robe, and eventually even his club got too heavy to carry. He left it where two rivers met like old friends, splashing and laughing, took up a walking stick instead and carried it with him to a dry land, where the ground itself'll burn you, and where you can walk all day never finding shade. Villages and vultures circling. Every now and then he'd trip over a skeleton the sun had painted white. It was a land like this one, Jones. Maybe it was here where Mac finally found that old magic stone buried under a mountain where the ancient gods had hurled it. Groping his way in the dark through a cave maze for so long he nearly went blind till he saw a green, shimmering light. Mac reaches out for that stone when the magic jumps out of the rock and hits him in the finger. Then his body's turning young again, gray hair growing back black, thirst quenching, balls lifting up to their former glory, and his skin becoming tough like bark. In his hand he found a weapon of the gods, a spiked ball of mighty iron on the end of a long-ass chain. This was the picture the graybeard showed me of Mac, freaking invincible, nearly filling the page with his muscles, swinging that chain like a comet, skin harder than the boulders that killed that village, and a green glow in the pocket. But in all the pictures, he always had an old face, like no amount of godly rebirth mojo was gonna make you forget the shit you done. I asked the elders, why didn't they make the face young again? They said, Mac lost his innocence, but he learned what strength was for. He didn't waste it neither, his strength. Used it for good, smashed the forts of evil men, and Sasquatch freed people from chains and disappeared before they could even get him drunk. Went from village to village sometimes and just talked about strength and how people use it for violence and pride, how it feels to let strength go, see that shit fade, how when it came back he knew this time he would use it to protect people and bring an end to violence. They wrote his words down in a book, and maybe that was the one I burnt, but the story stuck anyway. Mighty Mac stopping wars, toppling tyrants, they say he could even stare down storms. With that green stone's power making him immortal, Mac became a great champion of the planet, and it lasted for 300 years, a time of sweet peace way before you humans started fucking it up. My hero is Mac. He never raised his fist to nobody unless he had to. He figured out what strength was for. And yeah, everything went to shit after that, but I try to think about how amazing it would feel to be a hero like that, even for a second, with all the people crowding round. A champion, Jones. Can you see it?
Wow, I love it. I mean, there's so much symbolism and so much to think about. I can't wait to pick this book up. I mean, I hope that you're doing some readings around Paris too that we can visit. I know there's so many bookstores that always do the readings when you release a book. Will you be sharing this in Paris as well?
We're doing a launch. It's not only of Predators, Reapers, and Deadlier Creatures, which will be available on Amazon on 20 March in, oh my God, 11 days, but also a launch of an association with which I've been volunteering called Bodies of Work Paris, bodiesofworkparis.com. And that is all going to happen on April 26th at a bar called Les Bar Communes. It's going to start at 7 p.m. It's going to go until midnight. There's going to be readers. There's going to be poetry. There's going to be prose. There's going to be books. There's going to be musicians. We've got Elia Cohen as one of the musicians and another band called Bird Voices. It's going to be splashy. It's going to be fun. And at some point, I'm probably going to talk about drone warfare, dehumanization, and all that other fun stuff.
And I love the combination of all the above. It's kind of like the novel. There's love, loss, there's war, there's a lot going on, you know? We got ups and downs here. Even for
Well, yeah, I mean, even in the more whimsical sections, we're still trying to figure out the important things of the book. Like the themes are still pushing it. What is strength actually for? not only strength of a personal level where the consequences are relatively low, but strength on an international level. For years, the US, for example, has been championing democracy. Now even the Americans are wondering what the hell are we doing with our strength? Who are we championing? I don't mean to keep bringing it back here, okay? It just is like the zeitgeist of this moment, of this weird moment of confusion, I think impacts us all.
Oh, I mean, how can we not talk about it? It's weird times we're talking about right now. And what do you hope for readers to take away from your new book, Predators, Reapers, and Deadlier Creatures? Is there a particular message or feeling you want to evoke?
It depends on the reader. But thank you for asking because, for example, when I went back to school, when I did my master's at Carleton University in Ottawa, Canada, after going to Afghanistan, there was a lot of people who didn't understand how could you have gone to war, Matt? Don't you know violence is bad? And I was like, yes, I know better than anyone that violence is bad and that killing is awful and that all of the colonial projects ever in the history of life and nations have basically failed. And every time other nations try to intervene in others, even the US trying to rebuild Afghanistan in such a misguided way, even this like post-colonial colonialism that still kind of impacts what we're like trying to hold a country up for a few years as it gets on its feet. It's like we don't have a very good track record for this type of intervention. Okay, but at the same time, what do you do with a Putin? What do you do with an actual tyrant with a huge military and actual guns? So on the left, I'm like, guys, please, you cannot just stick your head in the sand like an ostrich and say like violence makes me uncomfortable and militaries make me uncomfortable. Thus, I cannot support or encourage or have anything to do with these people. Veterans, particularly since my work like champions veterans and tries to get people to ask questions about PTSD and other war injuries and stuff. I feel like we all should be natural allies on the left. On the right, I'm trying to push for like, let's have some empathy and look at the restrictions that could be put on for these weapons so that they've been used in a more ethical way and not in a monstrous way. You know, there are certain parameters in war, Geneva Convention and other type of restraints like that, that have made war still awful, but have reduced the war crimes and have reduced the innocent suffering, assuming that soldiers on both sides are not innocent. And I think that those are really important to keep. This is why Elon Musk's disassembling of all of these restraints on governments and on businesses is so disturbing, is because it took centuries to put that stuff into place to restrict businesses and such. Also, we need to restrict governments. Also, we need to restrict militaries because without those restraints, we'll take it to the logical inevitability. We'll take it to the sickest, most creative, most awful place. So I wrote a book for everybody on this theme, knowing that my experiences were very strange and out there, and knowing that my ability to articulate them was also uncommon.
Well, I think that is a beautiful note to end on, and I can't wait to read this book. I know a lot of people, including myself, are interested in these topics, and to hear it from the point of view of someone who actually lived them and to put a spin on it and not just be terribly sad, also, engaging and monsters are involved of all sorts. I'm very excited to read it. So thank you so much for writing it and sharing it with the world. And one last time, where can people pick it up?
I think the book is coming out on Amazon, definitely Amazon.ca. I'm confirming .com and .fr with my publisher right now, but Amazon.ca, definitely March 20. You can also follow me on MatthewJamesJones.com. I will be in touch via the mailing list. Check out the website and I'll give you a free word gift for joining up. I've become absolute pimp of marketing these last days. It's revolting. Um, but please check it out, and I'll be very happy to hear what people think. I also really I wanted to take some language back because we had spent the entire war sanitizing language and kind of making it safe so that when we used terms. That when a person was killed or wounded, we could avoid the kind of emotional consequences of that. And this project for me was not only how do I take my own humanity back, but how do I redeem language itself? So that's one of the major motors and why I wrote it. Ambitious, I know.
That is no small task for sure. And once again, thank you so much for sharing with us. And definitely check it out, guys. Pick it up, support Matt Jones. And thank you once again.
Thanks so much for tuning in to La Vie Creative. You can find more information on MissParisPhoto.com. And if you enjoyed this show, please feel free to share and spread the word for all my creative guests. We have the power to help them to keep doing what they love. See you next time.